Welcome to the podcast here on the Everyday Nerd Podcast. It's your boy Loki along with Joss.
Hey!
And of course our man Marvin over there.
Hey!
Hey, what's up, Marv? Hey.
Oi!
So again, it's your friendly Everyday Nerd Podcast crew saying hello. And today we're going to talk about a show that just finished up on Disney Plus. We're obviously talking about Loki. So let's just dive into it. Loki, obviously, when we all had our perceptions of when this show was going to happen, the timeline and things like that. So we knew this, the character Loki at the end of, or during Endgame, took off. We didn't know where he went. He mysteriously got the Tesseract and he took off. Come to find out when this series begins, he's out in the desert, and boom, he's found there, and all of a sudden, here come these agents to get him.
Right.
And you're wondering, well, who are these agents? And it's like, okay, well, who are these people? And then they identify themselves as like the TVA, and they call them a variant. And it's like, well, what are you talking about? And then they basically get him. And what's real entertaining about this stuff is, as an MCU fan, you want the material, and you're looking at it like, wow, what's going to happen here? So you see him getting processed through the TVA, and it's just hilarious how he has to sign everything he said, and he goes, what? So another sheet comes out, and every time he said something, he had to sign it, so basically, every time you talk, this pile is getting bigger. So, and it's just interesting how they touched on what this series is going to talk about, with the time variance, and how the TVA is there to make sure that time goes a certain format, that it's supposed to go the way it's supposed to go. Now, Joss, help me out here. So talk me up a little bit here. So when he goes in there, he's in front of a judge, and the judge is telling him about things, and then he's watching a video from a character named Miss Minutes, which is pretty cool. What does Miss Minutes break down on her little video? There's a lot of information she breaks down to kind of set up the show.
Well, okay, first of all, you gave me a hard question. So,
or should we give it to Mark?
Let's see what I can recollect. I was actually going to bring it back even further, just to even set up, because what I wanted to just say at the beginning, I was like, wait, we have to remember that Loki dies like so many times. Okay, Loki has like 11 lives, and we have to also remember that in Infinity War, he died at the hands of Thanos. And so we, the majority of us thought, okay, that's it, but yet it's like, but wait a minute, what truly happened, with Loki, because he is the god of mischief. And so, how is he really truly dead? And then, like you said, in Endgame, when the Avengers went back and to recollect the Tesseract, there, as you mentioned, there's Loki. So I want to kind of remind, our viewers and our listeners that, hey, remember, we thought that that one Loki was dead, and here he is again. But yes, now he's definitely in front of the time in the TVA. And with Miss Minutes, I thought it was interesting, because I think with Miss Minutes, she's, how they say it, even like with any Marvel, you can't just trust that fact, and we're going to get into that a little bit later, but for the fact that she talked about how time all started, and help me out, Marv, because you are our historian here. But with Miss Minutes, she was talking about how all through time these things have occurred, which they were supposed to, but then every once in a while something will happen, which is like a nexus event, and goes off the branch. And so that's what the TVA is for, to get people back on track, because if not, then the time, I don't know, what are they, the time council? I forgot what they're called, but it's to protect the whole timeline, the sanctity of the timeline. So Marv, add more to it, because I just gave a very...
Well, before I get into that, I do also want to add that I hope people remember that the Loki that we are seeing now was not the Loki that we have been following up to his death of Thanos. This is Loki who has now gone through the growth of the events of the Dark World, Ragnarok. He's the same bitter person who just got captured by the Avengers. So you have to remember that this is his mindset. This isn't the Loki we've been following for the past few years. Now, as far as all the Miss Minute stuff, if I recall, they said somebody's variants went crazy, and then they started this big time war, and it almost got wiped out. And this is why the TVA exists, to make sure stuff like that does not happen again. Basically, it covers the biggest tropes of time travel. What happens when
so it'd be the Time Masters, right? Am I correct?
Thank you, Time Master.
So I know where, I was trying to give you two guys to let me know what. I know we all forgot. Yeah, I'm going to come clean.
I gotta now have I gotta now get back to like what the facts are.
Yeah. So basically, summed up real quick with Miss Minute's video is the fact that the Time Masters they were I guess beings already, and they decided that they wanted to make sure time flowed that it flowed correctly, which obviously is going to bring up a lot of questions of, well, what is supposed to flow correctly? What is supposed to be the true timeline? Because they, like Joss mentioned earlier, you have these nexus events where they show you how the line is supposed to be straight, and the nexus event is like a tree branch forming out, and meaning it's an alternate reality. Like Joss and Marvin said, it's interesting to note that we've seen what happens to Loki at the end, where he would eventually, like Marvin mentioned, Ragnarok, and how he was there, Darkwater, how he was there also. So all those events, the Loki we're seeing, have not happened. So when it's interesting when his handler Morbius takes him in.
Mobius. Different character.
Yeah, Mobius. Yeah,
different character.
Wait.
I'm like, Morpheus. Isn't that the?
No, I was thinking Morbius.
Morbius is the vampire.
That's a vampire.
So, I was thinking the guy from Matrix.
Yeah, I misspoke. Thank you, Mark. Because everybody right now is commenting, what the heck is this guy talking about? That's Spider-Man. I already know it. Anyways, takes him in and shows him basically what his life is supposed to be, meaning the stuff we've seen, all the way through, and how he died by the hands of Thanos.
But you know what? But Lou, I also want to make mention that when it's all the stuff you talked about, Loki was arguing with fact that, well, wait a minute, the Avengers, they went back in time and they got the they got the Infinity Stone. That wasn't supposed to happen, but then the judge actually said no, that was supposed to happen.
Yeah, the judge saying it's supposed to happen. So it's like, okay.
Now and there's a part of me thinking who decides which time travel shenanigans is supposed to happen and not.
So there's something we're definitely going to touch on in our podcast here, and that's something they talked about through the show now. You see it through the show. But what's interesting is us as fans, and us that since we've seen all these movies of Loki's life, and to see, like Marvin said, this is the Loki who's bitter, who thought he was going to get New York City with the help of Thanos and all that. And now he's watching his mother's death. He's watching what happens. He's watching his own death to an extent. Oh yeah, he did see his own death. So that must be a little mind-blowing for him at the time. And of course, being that he's the god of mischief, he's thinking, okay, it's a big lie. They're just setting me up. And of course, it's interesting how, Marvin mentioned, it's great that he mentioned it, that we got to remember, this is the Loki that we're seeing. The guy who was just defeated in the first Avengers movie, not the guy later on who was fighting with his brother at Ragnarok, who took on Thanos towards the end. No, this is the guy that was bitter and was trying to rule the world and invade New York City. And that's when we first see the Avengers form together at this point. So it's interesting to note here on the Everyday Nerd podcast that we're going to dive into the show. And it's really interesting how I know Marv has a lot of opinions to express on this show, but it's only a 6 episode series. So I'm kind of setting Marv up on that end. But So going into it, Loki now is just faced with this issue of, well, what am I going to do? So basically, his handler kind of recruits him to help him find a variant, and they explain what a variant is. And apparently, Loki finds out there are a lot of variants of himself. So imagine that, guys, that you find out that there are other versions of yourself in different timelines and universes. How do you react to something like that?
This universe is way too big for us to be alone. So
yeah,
I won't rule out anything as far as like, is there life outside of here? Is there different universes? We don't know those answers, so I wouldn't rule it out. Depending on who they are, I would definitely ask a lot of questions like, okay, so what decision did they make that I didn't make, and how did they turn out?
So, up to that point, there was actually a lot of information, and you brought up a good point. It's only 6 episodes, so I felt, overall with the series, it just went by really quick. But also, in a sense, that it also was so slow in regards to time, because I was truly trying to understand what is this all about. And for Loki, I think it was his journey is also in this sense. Now that he's part of the TVA, and trying to find his variant, what is his purpose? And I think throughout when I was watching, I was trying to understand what is his purpose now, and why is he looking for this variant? Because when Morpheus.
Mobius.
We're bringing up 2 different characters.
Okay, when Owen Wilson, he was been on the hunt, and he's like, hey, I really could use this guy because you know him, the variant better than anyone else because it's you, So
I think when you ask finding out what his great purpose is, you have to remember he just saw his entire life shown right in front of him, and the fact that no matter what he did, what was it all for? Especially a lot of those questions that Mobius asks him. He's like, okay, what do you want? I want to rule. Okay, and then what? He kept asking him to the point. He kept asking, and then what? And then what? To the point where Loki said, I don't know. So obviously Loki is, this is a show about Loki, trying to soul search. Okay, what really is his purpose? For somebody who always talks about, I have great purpose, and then you see, especially just in that first episode, he's not sure of what it is.
Well, I mean, even for the fact that he was asked, why do you do it? Why are you mischievous? What are you trying to gain from it? Why? And I think it got to the point where, where Loki's like, I just enjoyed doing it. It was just something that he enjoyed doing to create, whether it be create harm or something. But I think he must have gotten some sort of power, this sense of, power or something, for the fact that he's above, and that was maybe somewhat of an adrenaline rush or something that just made him feel good about himself.
As with all bad people,
right?
They get off on
overcompensation. So I think that was
especially when you have a brother that is the god of thunder. Of course, you're going to try to.
It's like, how are you going to compare? How are you going to compete with with this long blue, long hair, blue eyed guy who's got the, who's got the God, why am I forgetting because of my allergies? But
Also, if I could go into one of my many opinions of the show, I do like a lot of the deep conversations that they have, especially with Mobius and Loki. But I feel like it led to a great weakness of the show, where I feel like there was a lot of missed potential here with the show. When you have a show about time travel, and especially with a character who's known for mischief, I think you need to go balls out. And the fact that so much of this show was, don't get me wrong, I love shows or movies that are dialogue heavy. I mean, Quentin Tarantino is one of my favorite directors. But if you spend so much of the show sitting at a table with 2 people talking, it's like I said, I felt like it didn't go as I for a show that's about time travel, I feel like it didn't go as far as it could have. Granted, there are a few there's an episode later on where it kind of gave me exactly what I wanted. It's episode 5. So just go. But when I saw that's what I want. Even there's also a little bit where Loki and Mobius, they go into ancient Rome right before Pompeii erupts.
Yeah.
That's the kind of hijinks I would expect them to do, and I kind of wanted to see more of that, just to see. Okay, Loki is still trying to be Loki, but then he's realizing it's futile. But then, in the end, that was it.
But what's interesting, though, I would want to see is, okay, if you're the god of mischief, I want to see more of his powers, more of like something that actually shows. And it seems to me that this, his whole purpose in the TVA is somewhat of a redemption arc to the fans, I think, versus to him, because of course he didn't know all the stuff he did. And I think in a sense, what really entertains me with the whole Loki character is that he is the god of mischief. There's this sense of fun and entertainment about him, because even when towards the end, the other character asks, are you going to double cross me or betray me? Well, in a sense, I was kind of waiting for that because he's the god of mischief. And I was like, okay, he's going to turn, he's going to be the Loki that we know. So in a sense, for the fact that we went through the show, it seemed like it was more of a redemption arc of his character for us versus what we, know about.
I feel like also at the same someone's dog.
Your dog wants to say something too.
Yeah, my dog wants to say something. He's talking to the neighbors and then saying stuff like that.
I do want to say also that
wait, hold up, Marv. You're listening to the Everyday Nerd podcast here, and I'm Loopy along with Marvin and Jocelyn here. And I didn't mean to cut Marv off on his point. I just want to bring up one quick thing, and we'll get to your point, Marv. Is that you mentioned the whole having fun with time? I see what you're saying. I'm with you on that. Like, let's go to a couple of more historical events in time. And I did enjoy the Pompeii, but one event that I did like, and Josh, you touched on it, how my brother is the god of thunder. My brother is this. He's pretty much the heir apparent, yet I'm trying to make myself the heir apparent. How they did DB Cooper. Now, that is an event. That is a historical event that you walk away going, yeah, and you're like, okay, that could actually be it, right? That was so great how they did that. They brought in a little historical thing. And for you, Josh, why did he do it? Mischief, but guess what? He lost the bet. So he had to do this. See, so that kind of goes with answering your question, Josh, of why your brother is the god of thunder. So what are you? You're the god of mischief, and he's going around doing these little bets that he has to fulfill. And yeah, like Marv said, I like the fact that, and I'm kind of with you on that, Marv. I thought maybe we would see more significant events in history. I liked how DB Cooper, and I loved how they touched Pompeii. And I'm like, okay. And I was kind of waiting for a little more.
And
we didn't get those. So I'm with you on that. I'll agree. I'm with you on that. So go ahead, Marv. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Just like what Jocelyn said, where in the end, this was probably a redemption for Loki. I think sometimes that could be a fine line with a character like Loki, because I know we all want to make him likable, but we have to remember he's a very selfish guy. Kind of to rant on another Marvel property, that was my problem with the Jennifer Lawrence Mystique, because Mystique is an evil person, and the fact that they went out and make her Katniss Everdeen from Hunger Games, that's what annoyed me about those movies. Anyways, back to MCU. Now that you bring that up, I do see that definitely this was in a way a redemption. But like I said, we have to remember that in the end, Loki is still the god of mischief, and as we see, especially later on, he really, in the end, he puts himself above everything else.
Okay. We talked about how he was basically recruited to find his own variant. Turns out the variant that they're really looking for is a female version of Loki. Now, no, before you say it, Marv, I know you're about to say it's not female Loki, and I know you're gonna say what you're gonna say, which is good. I like it. And the thing about this character, her name is Sylvie. and we first meet her in, I believe, was episode 3. Am I correct on that? Episode 3.
The end of episode.
Yeah.
Well, the end of episode 2, we didn't really get who she was.
And it turns out she becomes a real important character for the rest of this series and in the upcoming MCU. Has to be. And what's interesting about her is that we kind of see her little story about the Nexus event. Well, see, that's the thing. We didn't get a full explanation to why she was taken by the TVA, because it showed a little of her history, how she was taken as a young girl. And from what I saw, I think she was taken from Asgard.
Yeah, it looked like it. Yeah.
So she was a young girl taken from Asgard. So the question is out there, like, well, what did she do that they had to take her? You know, why did the TVA have to take her at such a young age? See, so we obviously get to meet her, and you see the relationship that it's funny. You kind of see a relationship of Loki having with himself. You guys talk about redemption and getting to know Loki more. You're kind of seeing a version of Loki, like going, well, okay, this is not just because she's female, but she's also coming from a different, kind of the same perspective, but yet a different perspective of where he's coming in. So, of course, they both agree that, you know, it comes down to it that, you know what, we got to get we got to get the bigwigs here. You know, that's it. We got to knock off the bigwigs, and we're going to correct everything, and that's fine. So they decide to team up, which is interesting. And Joss, you pointed out, like, wait, and we all thought of it too. We all thought of it when they teamed up, is like, who's going to turn on who and when? It's just a matter of when the turn was going to happen.
That's Loki's nature. He's going to turn.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the thing, though, is that
going to turn.
Right, but then that's the thing that I was thinking about. It's like, well, wait a minute. Okay, she's a variant. Does that make her also then the goddess of mischief? Right? Does she have a sister that's similar to Thor? Where's the similarity is kind of like what I was thinking about when I was watching her.
You know,
so this is where I'm gonna, Marv, before you speak, this is where I'm gonna give it to our man Marv on this one. Explain to the folks, see, there is obviously a lot of people that know the comic origin of a character named Sylvie, who is an enchantress. Go ahead, Marv.
You know what? Before the 6th episode, I would loudly say that she is not Loki. She is the enchantress. That is another Asgardian villain.
So she's a villain.
Yeah, in the comics, she's a villain.
Comics.
And her power is she enchants people. But I think later on, as we get down, my answer may be different, because maybe it's possible that she could be a female version of Loki. As you said, is there a goddess of thunder? I mean, I don't think
thunder.
Well, that's what I'm thinking.
I personally don't think this is going to tie into Love and Thunder, because that would take away.
Oh, I see where you're going with that.
I think you're on to something.
Because of the next Thor movie, could that be?
I hope not. If I can be totally honest, I hope.
Well, that would be interesting, because let's just say it. Are we talking about Jane?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just say it. If in the next Thor movie, okay, we're jumping to predictions, people. So if you're listening to us, just keep up. So are we saying then with Jade, she becomes the goddess of thunder? Does she have a sister that's Sylvie?
Well, like most things, correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, but in most things, like in comics and movies, there's got to be a good and there's got to be a bad. There's a yin to the yang, right? Yeah. And it only makes sense now. See, you brought up the point, Joss, of, does she have a sister and this and that? And wow, we get word that Jane Foster is going to be a female Thor. Huh, interesting.
I think if they go that route, it's going to take away from Jane being Thor, because I feel like, if you treat her as just an alternate version of Thor, it takes away from the Jane Foster character of her actually being worthy of being Thor. And that's the more compelling story than, she's an alternate version.
Yeah, I don't like the
I'm hoping they don't go that way. I can't believe I
but it's still part of the story.
Let's hold on to that thought. let's finish up the series, and then we'll get back to this. We're gonna get to a lot of theories at the end.
But you know, though, also another thing that I thought about was like as Sylvie was introduced, I kept thinking like, are they like brother and sister from like way back when that they never knew about?
Oh my God, I have a nasty joke, but I'll say it off the air. I really have a nasty joke about alternate version of herself.
I honestly thought, because I was as I was watching these episodes, I was trying to understand her, like you said, like why was she taking at such a young age? Why was she always on the run? And then I'm thinking, well, okay, with Loki's character, that's his dad, like Thor's family, that he was adopted. Loki was adopted. So that's why I was thinking, are they from the same family?
Yeah, because they never really touched on his frost giant roots since.
Yeah. You know what's interesting? I don't know if you guys caught it when Loki was in trial. His last name was being spoken. Did you guys catch that?
No, I didn't catch it.
Exactly. See, while you would hear Thor anytime Thor would do son of Odin, right?
Or Odin's son, yeah.
Or Odin's son, right?
Okay.
And that's why you go, okay, that's Odin's son. While I picked up on that, how the judge kept calling him Lops. I was like, wait, what? And then it turns out.
What did you say?
Lofi's son.
What?
Lofi's son.
Lofi's son?
Lofi? Okay, I think what Lou is getting to, you remember the first Thor movie?
Yeah.
Okay, you remember the main frost giant in that movie?
Yeah.
His name is Lofi. Laufey. And he is Loki's real father.
Really?
Yeah, you don't remember that? Yeah, back from the first movie? These movies a lifetime ago. I get it. I get why you
watched it. I just didn't.
Yeah, because that's the one thing I first picked up on. It's like, wait a minute, she keeps calling him, because we're just used to calling him Loki.
Right.
But she would always say Loki lots. It's like, wait, what? What was that? And then sure enough, I go, wait a minute. And I go, okay, that's kind of cool. See, so my point being is that Loki, as this particular Loki that we see, okay, that we've watched and all that, this version of Loki is one that we in this show got to know different aspects of and got to learn about, and it, like Marv said, it started with a core thing of just his name to now a female version of him to how season 1 ended. And just the fact that you see Loki, we had one perception of Loki, and then at the end of this series, we obviously have a different one. Now, again, I want to say it correctly, Mobius, right?
There you go, just without the R. Without the R.
I'm so used to it. So Mobius, I think, is a real big key character because the fact that one recruited the Loki we know. You notice, though, with all the other Lokis we encountered, all the male Lokis we encountered, they were named Loki. But this particular Loki was named Sylvie, which I think is interesting. I don't know if that means all the female Lokis have a different name as to being Loki. I mean, did you pick up on that, Marv? The fact that when we got to
I really just
5,
saw it as she was not a Loki.
Yeah, see, so that kind of goes to your point of, well, everybody else is a Loki, yet she's a Sylvie type of thing. So
things later on are making me question that, but we'll get there. Hopefully we'll get there soon because I have a lot to say about a certain person.
All right.
Okay. And I think I know who it is. So let's get there. So through the series, we see obviously a lot of development. And like Marvin said earlier, there's a lot of dialogue being said. And within the dialogue, that's where, unfortunately, people, you're going to have to listen and take note and kind of understand what they're talking about. And in case you folks didn't notice, at the end of each episode, the stuff you would see was kind of like stuff they were telling you about within the episode, whether suddenly you see a file of new characters that you just saw that episode, or just something new that happened in that episode. It was interesting how they would always show all this. So getting to a certain point within the series, Sylvie and Loki find their way back to the TVA. I believe it's either episode 4 or 5, where they're now into TVA and they want to take over. They're battling the agents of TVA. And the big reveal, I jumped on a little too soon. The big reveal that happens in episode, I believe 3 or 4, is when Sylvia explains to Loki that everybody in the TVA are variants.
Yep.
And that's kind of mind-blowing there.
Well,
like, whoa, wait a minute.
But you know, it's interesting because when you say that, before that piece, that conversation, when Loki and Mobius was having that conversation, you know, Mobius was like, yeah, you know, it'd be really cool to be on a jet ski. And I thought that conversation was, you know, it's like, wait a minute, let's pay attention to this, because he was talking about like, yeah, it'd be so cool to own a jet ski and see it. But when you're saying that with the big reveal, and that Sylvia mentioned, they're all variants. And then when Loki went back and, you know, was trying to convince Mobius, like, no, you've been lied to this whole time. You've been lied to. Everyone here is a variant, including you. And Mobius, he actually had to find out himself. So when he went to go see Race Slayer, what's her name? You know who I'm talking about.
The judge.
But you know, the one who's in charge. And when he switches and exchanges that device, you know, he brings it back and he finds out that there's a video of like the other agents, and that they found out that they're variants, and he realizes that, so that, you know, when confronted, he realized, you know, he was on a jet ski. He does have that memory, because what happens is that when Sylvie, when she, you know, and they do go through all these arms length to make sure that she does not get in contact. She cannot be left alone with anyone in TVA, because what happens is that when she touches them, she enchants them. But she said to Loki, no, I don't do anything to them. I just unlock a memory that they already have. So there's a fact that, you know, he probably was on a jet ski this whole time. But I also want to make mention that, you know, before that conversation happened, what was so funny was that, you know, Mobius, he didn't believe Loki at first, so he put him in a time loop. And then we had that character from Thor,
Lady Sif.
She would just keep coming. And he's like, God, this is like over and over again. He would be like, listen, and
you know, that reveal that they're all variants, that's another critique of the show I have. That reveal fell flat on me, because they just told us that they were variants. I wish we would have experienced the journey of Sylvie and Loki discovering that they were variants, instead of just having a dialogue and just Sylvie saying they're all variants. Imagine if you watched Endgame without, imagine a world where Ant-Man and the Wasp or the Ant-Man movies didn't exist, and we watch Endgame and they just explain time travel. They tried to tell you all the quantum realm rules without it, and then because we had the movies to at least experience it. Now imagine if you had watched Endgame and you did not know any of the quantum realm. They just told you that. It wouldn't have. For me, it's not as fun when you're being told it instead of experiencing them. The characters.
Well, we did somewhat experience it in terms of like some of those other characters that got enchanted. You know, like with that one character, I forgot. She was like, wait, what did you do to me? What did you do to me? What did I see? Because all of a sudden it was just an enlightenment when she was. Yeah,
but when we get to the actual reveal and we're just told they're all variants,
I see.
That's it. I'm like, I wanted to see the light bulb moment in their eyes when they're like, oh my God, we are all variants. That would have been that would have been, oh my goodness. Instead
or could it be, here's the question, how come how come Sylvie never enchanted Loki?
Oh, he said he was she tried. Remember?
Okay. No,
she tried it. And there's where the Loki we know goes, you're trying to enchant, what are you doing? You can't do that to me. See, so that kind of established something right there too between them, that he's like, no, you can't do that move. It's like, no, I can't work. That's not going to work on me. So I understand how Marv feels. And what's interesting, I try to calm him down from, just destroying everything in his house.
Show, don't tell. That is an entertainment rule. Show, don't tell. And they told us instead of showing us.
I think I agree with Marv in the fact that it could have been like a bigger, oh my God moment type of thing. But I think
it could have been a cliffhanger of an episode.
I thought to me, the bigger reveal was a little bit later.
Exactly. That's what I was trying to explain. That
5.
Later on, there's the big, obviously
that big reveal was a reveal.
End of this season was a big reveal. But that's why I hate my thing I would just say to Marv is I understand. I'd much rather see a whole buildup than just, it seemed, and I kind of agree with Marv, it was at the end of the episode kind of like a throwaway line. Like, oh, and by the way, they're this. And then you see credits roll. It's like, wait a minute. What was that? Kind of thing, so
okay.
I understand how he feels on that. I kind of felt that way too, that, man, that just seemed like a throwaway line. That
it's a missed opportunity, as I said. This was a missed opportunity to make that something big.
Now, I think, honestly, if this was more than 6 episodes, they could have totally built that out. Because how Marvel is.
But then also, it's like, why 6 episodes when the other ones were a lot longer?
Well, and I feel like Falcon and Winter Soldier, for the 6 episodes we got a lot more out of that.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that show at least kept moving, even for its more quiet moments, it was still moving. Mm-hmm. This show, Loki, really felt like stop and go, and a lot of stop. That was my problem. Also, it's not so much the story I had the problem with the show, it's the way the story was told. That makes sense.
I think it's more also a sense that, like what we said when we started, what Josh said, is the fact that we got to, this show is season 1 actually is more of a show that's, we got more in depth with Loki, the character himself, and things like the reveal of him being, hey, we'll throw it out there, him revealing that he's bisexual, things like that, and it's like, okay. And even, when he threw that out there, he kind of just threw like, hey, it's not even satisfying for me, see? Which was interesting how, they're talking, he's talking to Sylvie and they're on the train. And, she asks him, oh, is there a princess or a prince? And he goes, and the way he said it's like, had them both, no big, hasn't worked for me. And she kind of did it back to him like, yeah, same here with me. So that's interesting how, again, more in depth, and I know it's also Marvel being, opening up to obviously the LGBT, Q community, and that's cool. That's a good thing that Marvel does, and they're going to be doing a lot more of that. We're going to see that later on, which is good. But that's why I feel when it comes to this first season. Now we got to remember it's the first season. We already know there's going to be a second season. So I think for this season, it was a lot of, hey, this is Loki. This is what you're going to know about. And quite all right. And, this is what you're going to learn about him and things like that. We're now kind of like at an interesting point here where obviously Loki's trying to convince Mobius that, hey, guess what? You're a variant. And Sylvie and Loki are trying to get the TVA soldiers, I guess, I don't know what you want to call them, or employees, there we go, to understand that they're variants as opposed to, what they've been thinking this whole time.
But and so what was the price? What was the price that he had to pay when he found out he was a variant? He got pruned.
Yeah. So I mean, that's the thing. And the interesting question he was asked was, well, where would you want to be? Yeah. And he just goes, I'd like to be where, I was originally.
On a jet ski.
Probably on a jet ski. So that's interesting. So yeah, now again, we see this battle, and I gotta be honest with you guys. I'm seeing the battle. We see the timekeeper. They made their way up to where the timekeepers were, and there's this big battle. And I'm like, oh, here we go. We got the reveal.
But how did you all feel when you saw the actual timekeepers? Like when I saw those 3, up on there, I was actually like, okay, this is getting good, and then it's like
I already had a feeling things were not what it seemed.
But I kind of like when I looked at this, I was like, well, this is interesting, But then when that big fight happened, but then of course, Loki was trying to tell her something. But it was chilling.
And it was like the Wizard of Oz, basically.
Exactly.
It was totally like the Wizard of Oz at that point, where you get this, you're thinking, okay, here we go. We're right there where the timekeepers are, and we're going to see who it is. We're going to destroy them. And all of a sudden, it's not real. And see, in a sense, that kind of could have been also part of Marvin's thing about how they could have done the whole better way to reveal a variance, that these people are actually variants as opposed to just, oh, hey, they're variants type of thing. But yeah, we find out that, and I know Marv already knew, but we find out that the timekeepers there aren't really the timekeepers. They're really not. It's just more like statues, and it's just robots and androids. Am I correct on that, Marv?
Yep.
I always want
avatars, if that's
yeah, kind of thing. Yeah. So it's interesting. And then by the end of, the Loki gets pruned, right? At the end, because he gets pruned.
I actually I felt an emotional response there, because when he get pruned, I'm like, oh no.
I actually felt it more when Mobius got pruned. I was like, no.
Yeah,
I felt both. Okay, so I felt both. I'm like, oh. And then when Loki, like, oh. But when I have to say, when Sylvie just slayed one of those, fake timekeepers to reveal it's fake, then for me it's like, oh, now we're gonna up the ante. To me, that's the point it got good.
Yeah. So Loki gets pruned, and he shows up in a world or a universe where he sees a bunch of other Lokis, which is pretty interesting. I like that.
Time, right? It was the end of time. No, it wasn't the end of time yet.
He was
they call it the void.
Yes, exactly. He was in the void, and he got to see so many versions.
I was hoping, because the void also references another character in the Marvel universe, but that a void as a person, but then this is a void as a place. So in the end, I knew it was a different thing. So
okay, so obviously, we see all these different versions of Loki, like what we were talking about, and the fact that it was kind of really, for me, entertaining to see the older Loki, dropping, Iron Man, Captain America, dropping these names, but you see how different variants dealt with certain things. He said he walked away. Another one said, I got to kill Thor. I got to kill my brother. And then obviously the great one that everyone's talking about is the alligator Loki. Yeah, that's kind of cool, So, and what's interesting about this scene is, we end up seeing Sylvie ends up being in the void as well. She finds her way there.
And she didn't find her way there. She
put herself there.
Yeah, she put herself there, and meets up with Mobius out there, and then they team up. They meet up with Loki, and they realize that, hey, this is it. We're gonna try to find the man behind or the being behind the curtain type of thing.
Now, this is when it started to really feel like the Wizard of Oz to me.
Yeah.
This episode 5, as I said, this was the episode where.
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
This is what Loki should have been throughout the entire series. Just this one episode. All the hijinks, meeting all the very different versions of himself, all the wackiness that comes with it. This is, that obviously episode 5 was my favorite episode of the show.
Okay, so which leads us to the season finale in episode 6, where they make their way to the door, work their way in the void to finally get to, I guess it is the end of time, right? They made their way to the end of time. Am I correct on that? Yeah. Open up the door, and you see just it's like a regular guy. It's like, oh, and I love his line. He just goes, disappointed. It's like, hey, this is me. Are you guys disappointed in what you saw? I mean, what were you expecting? And that's kind of what I liked about that was, in my opinion, I know we analyze and get deep in this podcast sometimes. And I think, to me, that's kind of a symbol of, like, how people think of when it comes to, like, the afterlife. What do you think you're going to see in the afterlife? And some people already have their mental image of what's going to happen, what they're going to see. I mean, I'm getting out there on this thought process. So I'm just thinking, like, the reaction that they had was, oh, you're the person, type of thing, was kind of interesting. How, and I love what he said. He goes, were you, not what you're expecting? And that was really great. So obviously now Marv's going to help me on this. I'm not going to say the name. Through a lot of things, again, through the season, everybody was dropping the name that, at the end, it's going to be this character, and we see the face on the endings of each episode. It's got to be him. I didn't once hear him say Kang the Conqueror.
No, and
I did not hear him once say that.
Now, here's my question. Before you guys got to this episode, do you guys follow the like all the breaking news?
I had no idea.
When you saw this guy, you didn't know who he was at all.
I had no idea.
So I tried to keep it like that. I tried to keep it like that.
So you know what? I'm coming from a perspective of like, okay, don't know too much about. I honestly just heard, name drop, but I honestly didn't know anything about this character, the relevance. I don't know how much weight he actually gets, or like how much weight he pulls or something.
So they announced already months ago that his name is Jonathan Majors. He was in another TV show called Lovecraft Country. That's a really good show on HBO.
Okay.
Where they announced that he was going to play Kang the Conqueror in the Ant-Man and Wasp movie. So when you see him, going back to how I used to think that Sylvie wasn't Loki, after seeing that, then I started to think maybe it is possible, because obviously this person that we're seeing now, he is not Kang the Conqueror. It's funny how the fanboys were all like, we want to see Kang. They did, but they kind of didn't also.
Yeah, exactly.
Because he was a variant, right? This is a variant.
Yeah, he's a variant, and he doesn't say his name. He's just.
But here's my question: if he's a variant, then who's the original?
Yeah, that's the thing. Because that's remember, he said, I'm the best of all my variants. Because if you know the Kang the Conqueror, he lives throughout many periods of history. In the far future, he's known as Immortus. In the kind of distant future, he's known as Kang the Conqueror. He's even lived in the past in Egypt as Rama Tut. So I know, I know, since you're the casual Marvel fan, the idea that this is the same person is really confusing. But the fact that they go out of their way, say, oh, these are all variants. So you can imagine that there's this version of this guy where he lives in ancient Egypt. And then here's another version that lives in the far future. That's a lot more easier to grasp. So when I started looking at them as different people, now I am kind of starting to believe, wait, you know what, maybe Sylvie is Loki. Because, just the way they did this character, like, it's very possible but yeah, that's Kang. I know, yeah, I like that little bit here. Like, some people call me a ruler. Some people call me a conqueror. Like Kang the Conqueror.
I know, exactly.
Yeah, I wish, I wish I had more of a backstory to be able to get excited like you.
Well, because I have a feeling this is him shaping up. I don't know if he's going to be Thanos level, but he is. You're going to meet Kang the Conqueror in the next Ant-Man movie. And I kind of have a feeling he will be in a lot more.
Well, also like with Eternals, right? Could it be also part of the Eternals story?
You know what? I don't know.
Anyways, we'll get to that piece later.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, Joss. I mean, you brought up an interesting point that, a lot, and like I said, fanboys, hardcore comic folks, they know who Kang the Conqueror is. And they know, look, Marvin gave us a little breakdown of this character. Now,
remember, there was a period of time no one knew who Thanos was. Now
exactly. The great thing about this is now, and I'm going to let me get to this point in a second. What I loved about the scene, let me talk about the scene first, was how the being we saw explained himself, how I'm the better version of all the other variants. And you saw how he explained everything, how initially they were all living peacefully amongst each other through other universes, through other time dimensions. And then suddenly, and like he said, some of the ones that aren't so friendly like him decided, no, we're gonna use what we know and try to take over all these other times and other these dimensions. Now, it's something I know we're going to talk about at the end, towards the end of the podcast. But what I found great about this is the fact that he's explaining himself. And for the person that doesn't know who Kang the Conqueror is, or has no idea who this character you're looking at, I feel his explanation, and again, I always preface all our podcasts by saying, we got to go with what the MCU is giving. Because again, they could do the swift turn and you go, wait a minute, that character is supposed to be this, and that. But, that's why if you're following MCU what they're doing right now, they're setting it up for people like yourself, Josh, who have no idea who this character is. And so I think the explanation that he kind of gave was a solid one. So people that are casual fans go, okay, so this is a being, and that don't even know the name Kang. They're like, okay, so this guy, has different variants of himself through different time dimensions and through all time, which is really good. And of course, he tells Loki and Sylvie that, if you don't kill me, you guys could go back down to the TVA. You guys could rule it. You guys could do it. And I got to set this up again. I got to take it back one step further. Miss Minute shows up.
Yeah.
And she says something to make sure to try to prevent them from killing this guy or destroying him. Miss Minutes says something to the Loki we know that, hey, how would you feel if you won? You beat the Avengers that day. How would you feel if you got the gauntlet to beat Thanos? It's a lot of temptation going on there, which is really interesting because we all know that as the timeline that he got beat by the Avengers and he was killed by Thanos. By Miss Minutes introducing that thought process, it's like, okay, the timekeepers will allow this to happen now. This will now be the actual event that's supposed to happen. And so it's interesting how, this show really touched on all these other time dimensions. And Marvin mentioned Ant-Man. Obviously, they taught the quantum realm, how that's mentioned, and how he basically told them, if you don't kill me, then guess what? We could fix it, go back to normal, but you guys could rule it. Or you kill me, you destroy me, and basically see the chaos. Yeah, he goes, you're going to see the war, see the chaos, and you'll see not so friendlier variants of me come out. And well, Sylvie, and again, this is something maybe you two will know. See, and Loki was trying to tell her not to do it, not to kill him. Here we go. It's like, are you going to turn on me? Is this the time you turn on me? And they threw it out there. This was it. And basically, I guess she decided, look, my goal was to destroy this man or destroy this being. This was my goal the whole time. She stuck to it. She decided to go in for the kill. So she goes in for the kill. Okay. And then sends Loki, and we will get to what happened next. Sends Loki back to the TVA, kills the variant that we see. And the variant says something interesting. He said, what did he say? He said, I'll see you soon, basically, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Meaning you're going to see somebody like me soon. So with that being said, Sylvie kills the variant that we see, sends Loki back to the TVA. Loki's trying to, he's running around trying to get Mobius to, hey, what's going on? We got to set, he's trying to figure out what to do. Suddenly he realizes that he's in a different TVA than the one he was first brought into. He turns and looks at the head of the statues that were there. It's now changed.
And so Mobius doesn't even recognize him.
He doesn't. He goes, wait, you're just an analyst. He called him an analyst. He didn't even call him a variant. He goes, oh, you're just an analyst. What do you want? See, and if you notice too, what Loki was wearing, he was wearing the white shirt. He had the analyst look about him. So when Mobius said, what do you want? You're just an analyst. Get out of my face. We got to figure out, how to fix all this. It's like he realized right then and there that, well, things have changed. And which is really cool now because it leads us to a lot of things. Now, this is where our discussions are going to really come in here on the Everyday Nerd podcast here.
I was confused because, like I said, I don't know anything about King the Conqueror. I didn't understand. Okay, I saw the statue change to him, so obviously it must mean something. I honestly had to go onto the internet to get an explanation of what did I see. So, there's a lot of unanswered questions, like Ray Slayer, right? Renslayer, she just exit. I mean, we find out that she was a teacher at one point or a principal. So we know that that's her story. So I really didn't know, like, okay, now what is it? It just felt like, like a soap opera to me. As far as just the ending, it didn't feel like one of those closures that we had from the other Marvel shows. This felt like somewhat of a soap opera that, okay, we're going into, the next season. So that's kind of like what I took from this.
I kind of agree with you there. I felt, how you said this ending is different. I feel like, in a way, the way they did this ending, I felt like it was a lot more subdued. Back to what I was saying, how this show could have gotten bigger. I think they could have made a bigger, it's weird. I know it's strange me saying this, but I think they could have made a bigger spectacle of what happened at the end instead of, like I said, back to people talking to each other at a table. And just like you, Jocelyn, it took me a while to grasp how big this ending was, because when just like the variant reveal, the ending didn't really land with me at first. It wasn't until I had time to think about it and like, okay, this could lead to some pretty big things. Like I said, I just wish they treated it as something big. If that was, if that makes sense.
What's interesting? I think I agree with you in that sense, Mark. Because coming away out, I'll admit I felt unsatisfied. Yet at that moment, I'm trying to unpack what I just saw and think about everything that the season was about.
Imagine if an Endgame ended with a big dinner table, and then just imagine Endgame just ended with a conversation.
That'd be like, wait.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing, guys. That is Avengers Endgame. That is a whole 10-year setup. My point on all this would be, maybe Marvel's doing just, okay, we're going to give you this. We're going to give you this, but not, here's some crackers, but you're not getting the meal just yet. Here's this. And here's the thing about the MCU is that they know there are people out there that are going to come up with theories and come up with this and come up with that. And what I liked about this, what I realized was, now that you have all these variant timelines just going everywhere, going crazy, you could really now bring in character. There's your license to bring in a character who died, bring in a character from a different version of a character. Oh, geez, character who died. We just saw Black Widow. We saw Scarlett Johansson, character who died. Everybody loved Rob Downey Jr. Exactly. Died.
Well, they need to pay him $1 billion to come back.
Exactly. Bring in a new character. How about a female Thor for you? See what I'm saying? How now with this time variant thing, you could get real creative and not have to just narrow yourself to, I guess, the canon of what people know from the comics and things like that. So that's why, for me, I'm thinking the MCU, by having a show like Loki, introduced to you that, hey, there could be different versions of certain characters. I think this is now going to help Marvel expand whatever process you could think. Because I know Marv's a comic guy, and he's our guy. He's our gloss. He's our dictionary. He's our Wikipedia when we need a character. But now at this point, Marvel can totally break out a character. Marvel's going to be no, this character is actually this and that. But guess what? They're going to say, but you're seeing a variant of the character.
I saw someone online saying, in a way, this makes everything canon. This makes Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. canon. This makes the Marvel Netflix shows canon. This even makes the X-Men movies canon.
Yeah. So
I'm wondering how they're going to deal with that.
Go on, Mark.
I think what I'm hoping for in the end is, like I said, this leads to somewhere, to a lot of potential. I'm just hoping that they don't use this as a crutch to rely on. I mean, just like if you look at the Infinity Saga, not every movie was about the Infinity Stones. And I'm kind of hoping that everything we watch from this point on, I hope it's not, this is an alternate version. This is an alternate version. Going back to what we were talking about with Jane Foster Thor, I'm really hoping that is not an alternate timeline Thor. Because that, for me, that takes away from that story. If you read the story about the Jane Foster Thor, there's some really deep stuff happening in that story. And if they pass it off as like, that's just an alternate timeline, I'm really gonna be disappointed. And that's the movie I'm waiting for the most.
Yeah, I mean, it possibly. But here's my thing, Mark. If they do a good movie, though, if it's a good movie story wise and everything, and let's say not after watching it, but let's say eventually, because we all know eventually there's going to be a new Avengers movie later on down the line. Let's say when it gets to that Avengers movie, you find out that, oh, there was an alternate story. Would you still not like the movie though? See, that's what I'm saying.
I think we'd have to wait and see. I trust Taika
Yeah,
Waititi,
that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
And I trust the cast. You know, there's actually talking about two potential. There's a little visual that I really like that they showed in Loki. They showed the parallel universes stacked on top of each other.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And there's a storyline in the comics where the multiverse is dying and they start collapsing into each other to form this giant amalgam world.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's like Crisis. It's like
exactly.
But Marvel's version is called Secret Wars, and that's such an epic story. And
yes,
and that was for me, it's like, is Marvel? I'm going back. When we talked about what is we're going here, like, is Marvel really going to do this? Is Marvel really going to do this? I mean, they brought out a bunch of movies together, so I'm pretty sure. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's fine.
Well, I thought, I think overall, I'm just curious as far as, okay, what's going to happen next? And, from reading the different articles, how it's going to overlap with some. I just think with this ending and going to season 2, I don't know. I'm just kind of like, okay, I feel like left hanging. So I don't really have, an overall prediction. I just kind of want to see, like, what's going to happen, just waiting for the next movie, because there's always a tie-in somehow, with all the different shows we've seen on Disney Plus, with WandaVision, Winter Soldier, and now this one. What are the effects now to the overall movies themselves, and bring it back to the original characters and that main storyline that we've been following this whole time? Because now with this whole Nexus and multiverse, to me is about to get crazy. And
remember, the next Doctor Strange movie is called In the Multiverse of Madness.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So I'm kind of wondering now, like, okay, with all the different shows, there is a parallel from the shows we've seen now on Disney Plus and how it's going to affect, like, the overall movies per se. That I'm just kind of like in this holding pattern in terms of, okay, what's next? Like with the Eternals coming, I don't know anything about the Eternals. So what, where's the tie-in?
I will say this, with the exception of Marvel calling the existence of calling the eradication half-life the blip. With the exception of that, I trust Marvel. I trust them. I think they know what they're doing. So, for whatever worries we may have, we stuck with them for 10 plus years.
Yeah.
They really haven't given us a real, even for some of the maybe the more less liked movies, they haven't given us any stinkers. Unlike the other guys. Sorry.
But but one moment that we didn't talk about, but one moment just to me was like, this wasn't needed, was when at the last episode when Loki and Sylvie all of a sudden kissed. I was like, wait, what? Okay, to me, I was like, no, that was dumb, because
there was a part of me that was kind of grossed out by that.
I was, because I was still thinking, are they brother and sister? This whole time. And then also, it's like, to me, it was like when we saw, the end of that whole Star Wars thing with, Rey and space, but it was just that kind of moment where it's like, was that really needed? To me, it really wasn't needed.
I think he kissed himself. There you go. He just kissed himself.
I'm trying to keep this PG-13. I'm not going to take this to rated R. So I'm going to be quiet.
I know you have material. So, well, with that being said, let's just wrap this up right now. The fact that coming out of Loki, I think what we've all come out with is the fact that, okay, it's going to lead to something. It was kind of, and as you can tell with all the Disney Plus shows, they tend to lead you somewhere. It's going to lead to obviously what's going to happen in the theaters. Okay. So Shang-Chi's coming out soon. The Eternals is coming out. So all of this stuff, it's all gonna like Marv said, we just trust Marvel what they're doing. I've come to realize that I'm no longer gonna try to figure it out because I'll be disappointed. And I keep bringing it up. WandaVision. I was just so mad about how I thought I was expecting some things and it didn't happen. So I realized I brought that on myself. See, so just like Marvin said, I think we should just kick back for the ride here and we could just talk about it like what we always do, talk about what we saw, and we can make predictions. I'm not saying, oh, we can't predict things, but honestly, we're kind of throwing it out there that possibly, and Marvin's hoping it's not true, but possibly the female Thor thing is because of the time variants that are going on right now.
The more I think about it, the more that makes me angry, and I hope.
Yeah, see that now he's getting it. But again, Marv, like I said, if it's a good movie and then we find out years later it's a variant, that's one of those things you may be disappointed, but at the time you were cool with it. Hey, this is a great movie. I was entertained. I liked it. It leads to whatever next story that's going to be happening. I mean, there's so many things out there, and yeah, one thing I will suggest, Joss, and I think Marvin doesn't do it, or he looks at internet fanboy rumors and whatnot. And there was one that was out there, and I just happened to glance on it, and I read it, and I was like, dude, why did? Here's the key: it's like it's a movie that hasn't even started filming yet. So I'm like, you know what? This person, they could change it like next week, whatever this person is reporting allegedly. But with that being said. Oh, okay. Well, do you want me to throw it out for you, Joss?
Well, yeah.
You want me? All right. So apparently, Guardians of the Galaxy 3, which hasn't even filmed yet, one of the beloved heroes, there's your hint, dies in this movie.
Oh, okay. I think I know.
And according
you're referencing something else, but I'll go.
Yeah, but according to this, though, the lady who plays Nebula, what's her real name?
Oh, she's my god, she's
I just
my
saw
celebrity
her.
crush.
Yeah, no, her name
is
Karen Gillan.
Yeah, I just saw her.
Apparently, yeah, she said her and the other woman that were reading, that's Mantis, were reading the script, and they let it out that, oh, it's funny, it's great, and it's sad. They said it's sad, so gives to the speculation.
Well, James Gunn and them have kind of said that this is their last. This is at least his last movie of the Guardians. He saw this as a trilogy, so maybe in that context, it said, because this could possibly be their last one.
Yeah. So with that being said, take that for what it is.
I thought you were referring to another rumor because who was it that said we deal with vampires also?
Oh, you mean Blade? You're talking about Blade?
Yes, I thought I thought that's what you were talking about.
No,
no. Maybe that's another thing. Maybe now they've let vampires loose.
I don't know. We'll see.
Who knows? We're just here for the ride.
Summing it up on my end, guys. I really liked it. I mean, Disney Plus does, entertaining. I wasn't disappointed. I was kind of like, I'd like to have more, but I get it. You're kind of the setup, like Joss mentioned. You're the setup for the movies. So, okay, I'll take it at that now. And like I mentioned to you guys before, you could kind of see what's going on with the spy espionage stuff coming one way, and you have the time, quantum, all that stuff coming another way. And so you could just see it all getting together for a Avengers movie eventually. So with that being said, how about you, Joss?
I'm ready. I mean, like I said, I'm in holding pattern. And so it's like, okay, I'm ready for the next one. I have no qualms about it. It's kind of like, all right, we did it. Great job. Here we go. And so it's like watching any of my other shows. There's, when it comes to the end of the season, knowing there's a second season, it's like, okay, I have to wait. So like I said, I'm just in holding pattern, but overall it was all right.
At least we're in a point where we have content to hold us over. I mean, before we get season 2 of Loki, we have a bunch of movies and other shows in this universe taking place. So we won't be left to dry until that time comes.
Okay. We're going to be busy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Busy. We're busy. We got movies from Marvel coming out every month. So
we have the Suicide Squad. Sorry to bring up the other guys, but we have the Suicide Squad coming up soon.
Yeah, it's supposed to be interesting. I mean, we got to give fair time to both companies and and again, Marv, any other movies or shows that you
have
to talk about.
Yeah, well, they do have What If on Disney Plus starting on I think August 11th. So that's before Shang-Chi, but it might be. Oh God, I don't know how many episodes it is, but I don't know if it's going to be finished before Shang-Chi comes out.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. When we'll do that one. But I have a feeling the next one we're going to talk about is Suicide Squad, just because that's next.
Sounds good. All right, guys. Anything else to wrap it up here?
No, I think we've done it.
All right. Yeah. That's Marvin. That's Joss. I'm Loki. Much love to you, DJ GOC, of course. And that was the podcast here for Loki with the Everyday Nerd Podcast. Thanks for coming out. Much love to you, DJ DOC. Peace.
Bye.